what I want to talk about, and we'll just do this for a few minutes, is so up here this afternoon, or this morning and this afternoon, we've been doing a tutorial using InstaGENI resources, and downstairs they've been doing essentially the same tutorial using ExoGENI resources. And so I wanted to talk for just a minute about what the similarities and differences between these two are and how you might pick which one you want to use. There are a couple of classes of resources that are currently available in GENI. There are InstaGENI racks and ExoGENI racks, which are on campuses around the country. And there's also a set of proto-GENI resources, which are test beds that existed before GENI ever came around that have also been federated into the system. And when you are designing an experiment to run on GENI, it's important to understand what's available at all of them so that you can figure out where you should be running your experiment and what's possible to run. So the main 4 questions to ask yourself, and we actually talked about this in this session a little bit this morning because somebody asked a question, but I'll go over it again, are, so first of all is, do I need access to bare metal hosts? Like, is running in a VM okay? And if you need some kind of performance isolation from other experiments that are going to be run, so for example, if you're going to run an experiment to get numbers for a paper, and you need to be sure that that's not perturbed by other people who might be sharing the host with you, then you might need a bare metal host. What are my networking needs? Do I need very high bandwidth? Am I running an experiment with OpenFlow? What tools, FLAC and Omni that we've used today, work with both of them. And then both of these are based on all these resources are based on other platforms. So in some cases, if you're familiar with the other platforms, such as OpenStack, you might be more comfortable with using ExoGENI, which is based on OpenStack. So bare metal hosts, ExoGENI and InstaGENI both provide a couple of bare metal hosts per rack. The proto-GENI sites actually have several hundred. The site at Utah has 600. There's one at Kentucky that has, I think, 200. So if you want bare metal, if you need lots of it, you're best off going to proto-GENI. If you need 1 or 2 machines spread out over a number of sites, ExoGENI or InstaGENI will be fine. We generally recommend to people that they use virtual machines unless they have a need for bare metal, because those are more scarce resources. ExoGENI uses KVM to run its virtual machines. InstaGENI and proto-GENI use either Linux containers, as we've been using today, or they also support Xen as the virtualization technology. On networking needs, the ExoGENI racks have machines with 10 gig NICs in them. The InstaGENI machines only have 1 gig, but you can actually get an entire interface to yourself if you want. So if you need a guaranteed 1 gig, you can get that from InstaGENI. ExoGENI, you can get up to 10, but that's going to be shared among everybody who's has a VM on the same host. And as I mentioned earlier, if you've used OpenStack at all, ExoGENI might feel a little bit more familiar to you because that's what it's based on. And InstaGENI is based on Emulab and also Planet Lab. So if you're familiar with either of those 2 environments, InstaGENI is going to give you something that's a little bit more familiar to you. The tools are for both of them are very similar at this point. There's mostly overlap. In the 3rd session of tutorials today, there's going to be tutorials on the Gemini and GIMI control frameworks. At the moment, those only work with GIMI only works with ExoGENI, and Gemini only works with InstaGENI and proto-GENI. Though there's work in place so that they work everywhere. There are a couple of little differences in terms of how things like post-boot scripts are handled to automatically start your software at boot time. So, for example, the FLAC tool that you use today knows how to set these for InstaGENI, doesn't know how to set them for ExoGENI. With InstaGENI, you have to pick which racks you want to use. So when we handed out those worksheets to you, it told you, use the Utah one or the Kettering one or the Kentucky one. ExoGENI has a feature, though I guess they're actually not able to use it today, where you simply say, give me some VMs, and it will pick a rack for you if you don't actually care geographically where your VMs go. In the session this morning, because someone asked, we talked a little bit about the different disk images that are available on both. So this is kind of a repeat of that. But so ExoGENI currently offers Debian and Ubuntu images. InstaGENI currently offers Ubuntu, Fedora, Windows, and FreeBSD is actually not listed on here, but it's up there. And if you have a virtual machine that you've already built someplace else, that you're using, that you've built and are using on your laptop, or an image that you've built that you're using on EC2 or in some other OpenStack instance, ExoGENI makes it pretty easy for you to just import that. That's significantly harder in InstaGENI. The thing that InstaGENI is better at is if you take one of our default images, say one of our default Ubuntu images, you can customize it and then take a snapshot of it and then load it on any of the machines in any of the InstaGENI racks trivially. And the last thing that I want to talk about here is some differences in kind of the philosophy the two take towards setting up stuff for the user. So ExoGENI's philosophy is to make as few assumptions as they can about what it is you're going to try to do with this. So there is not much default behavior in terms of configuring the network, for example. Whereas InstaGENI kind of assumes that you are a network researcher and does stuff like sets up routing tables and IP addresses on interfaces and that kind of stuff automatically for you. So like in particular, ExoGENI has if you don't give an ExoGENI rack, if you don't assign IP addresses, which is one of the things we did in the first session this morning, if you don't do that, you won't get any. In InstaGENI, if you don't specify any, we'll pick some for you. InstaGENI defaults to turning IP forwarding on. So if you create a complex topology and you ping through it, you'll have all the hosts in the middle will have IP forwarding on, and we'll have all the routing tables. ExoGENI, if you want to do the same thing, it's up to you to turn on IP forwarding. It's up to you to set up routing tables, which if you want a lot of control over those things, might be what you want. And then another thing you'll notice is that as you SSH into the machines for your tutorial today, you'll notice that they have host name set like server and client and whatever else we had you put in the RSpec. In InstaGENI, those get set for you automatically. In ExoGENI, they're not set. You have to figure out which machine you're on yourself. These are the hardware differences. As I said, I think the only thing that really matters the most to people are that ExoGENI has 10 gig NICs versus the 1 gig on InstaGENI, and each individual ExoGENI rack has a lot more stuff in it. Has a lot more capacity for VMs. InstaGENI, there's fewer of them, but there's fewer cores and stuff per rack, but there are a lot more racks. There are, I think, currently, so we're using 5 today. I think ones that are installed, and including ones that are installed, we're up to about 12, and including ones in flight, we're up to like 16 or 17. Whereas I think there are 5 or maybe 6 ExoGENI racks. So more geographic diversity versus more stuff at each site. I'm going to hand it back to Gary here in a minute, but before I do, are there any questions about like what you can do on an InstaGENI rack or an ExoGENI rack? I can answer the InstaGENI questions better, but.
So what's a node?
PC, right? So both these are built out of server class PCs and switches. In the case of ExoGENI, they're IBM switches. In the case of InstaGENI, they're HP switches. So yeah, so basically, an InstaGENI rack is a big, mostly empty rack that has 5 one-use servers in it, a couple switches.
So those nodes refer to what is in the experiment context is a hard and a bare metal.
So there are 5 nodes, and then some of them are available as bare metal, typically 2. Some of them are available for shared use via Linux containers, which is what we're doing today. Some of them are available for shared use via Xen.
And that's a static configuration.
It can be changed by the site administrator. So, like when we actually turned these up, we didn't have Xen as a shared option, and so the initial ones we set up, I think, had like 2 OpenVZ hosts and 3 bare metal, and we've added 1 Xen host at most of them. And my expectation is that over time we will probably shift more to suggesting that people use Xen simply because image portability between it and bare metal is really quite easy, and so that will change over time. If you go, actually, let's see. I can if I go into FLAC, if I have a convenient FLAC window open. Yeah, the one in the VM might be good. Just a minute. Where's my VM? Is that the VM? Yeah. There we go. Oh. So if I go to this window, for example, I can click on, let's say, click on the Kettering one. And I can actually see, Gary mentioned this advertisement spec. I can see a bunch of stuff about it, like what nodes it has. So down here at the bottom, I don't know if you can read that, but it tells me what sliver types I can ask for. Raw PC would be bare metal, OpenVZ or Xen are the choices that I have at this particular rack. And I can click on one of these things to see what is actually, which of these are currently available. I can't believe this is true because we've been having people allocate. Oh, I see. PC1 and PC2, again, it's probably hard to see from far back, have this little stacked looking icon, meaning they're currently shared. And PC3, 4, and 5 have like a desktop PC icon next to them, indicating that they're currently available for exclusive use. And the fact that there are green checkboxes by all these things means that they're available. So those 3 that are exclusive use are currently available. The ones that are shared still have more capacity on them, so you could ask for stuff on them as well. And generally within a rack, you don't ask for a specific PC because they're all intended to be the same. And the idea is that it's more efficient if you just say yes, one of the bare metal ones, because then next time when you say please give me one of the bare metal ones, maybe it's a different one that's available. Any more questions? Okay, since we've got about 15 minutes left, Gary's going to come back up, and this handout that you guys should have just received, Gary, you want to hold it up so we can take and see which one it is? This is going to get you creating the experiment that's going to be used in part 3 of this tutorial in the next session. So I guess if you're not going to be in the next session, you could do the part 2 that experiment that Gary mentioned. If you're going to be in the next session, this is going to set up the slice that you're going to use for that. So. Oh yeah.
No, I just didn't get the.
You didn't get a handout. Okay, here, Gary, I'll give you one. Is that the only one you have?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's plenty more.
Okay, does everybody have this handout now? At least everybody who's going to be in the Gemini tutorial in part 3? Okay, so it'll help things along in the next session if we start things up now, because that way we can wait for the resources to come up during the break rather than hold the tutorial session while everything is configured. So I'm going to walk through the instructions now, and then later on a different instructor will show you what to use with the resources. So please go back to the portal inside the VM, and inside the project GEC17, please create a new slice. And the slice name, it says should start with GEM. Let's say GEM, and then I'll pick my initials. And this shouldn't take long. Here we go. And then please launch FLAC within your new slice. So I'll do that here. And again, this takes a little while FLAC requests advertisements from every single aggregate manager it knows about. And it will also ask for the status of the slivers at every single aggregate, because it's not smart enough to realize that I only brought up the slice 30 seconds ago and haven't actually used it yet. So once it finally gets there, we're going to be dragging out 4 nodes manually onto the canvas. And please follow along, but don't use the same aggregate manager that I do unless my sheet happens to match yours. Look at step 2 on the front page of your instructions, and that will tell you which aggregate manager to use for your slice. In my case, that's the GPO BBN aggregate manager, but yours is probably different, so please follow the instructions and not me. Okay, my one is finished. So now please drag out 4 VMs from whichever aggregate manager is listed. So I'll do 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully you'll have a higher resolution screen than I can manage with the projector and be able to fit them on a bit more easily. But once you have the 4 nodes, we then want 5 links between them. So all the way around a ring between the 4 nodes, and then a single cord across the middle. There we go. That looks like the right topology to me, I hope. And then the next step, we're going to ask for GEMINI extensions, which is the purpose of the next session. You'll learn all about what this means. So for now, please just turn this on. That will add an extra node which you hadn't requested originally. So that will be the 5th node, appears automatically once you turn on the Use GEMINI instructions. Then please click the Submit. I'm not going to need this slice for the 3rd session, so I won't actually submit. But if you're going to be here in the 3rd session, please do submit that request for the 5 nodes and add 5 links. I suppose we have about 10 minutes left in this session, so we'll be happy to help if there's anything that looks like it's going wrong, but hopefully that will complete before 3:30, and you'll be in a great position to start the next session. So
and yeah, if you don't get this part to work, please do ask us right now, because it'll be awkward at the beginning of the next session if there are some people who have this slice created and some people who don't. So we're happy to help answer questions on this.
yeah. So any questions about the setting up for the Gemini part? Or any questions about anything else that came up during this session? I'm happy to answer or redirect them to other people who can answer them. Yes?
So, how did you get to the Gemini again?
Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned that. It's the third tab. And when there's these 3 tabs here, the left-hand tab has the list of AMs. The second one is what's in your slice, and then the third one here that says plugins. The yellow jigsaw puzzle icon that will open up the Gemini as the default from that list box there, and then the only item is use Gemini extensions. So click the third yellow jigsaw puzzle icon to bring up the option to where you can choose Gemini. Is there anybody having any trouble creating a slice or joining the project or the nodes and the topologies?
Okay, so the question that I was just asked a question that I'd like to answer for everybody because it's a good question. So the question was, let's say that you're working on like a kernel module or something, and you manage to like wedge one of your machines. So what do you do about this? There's a couple answers to this. So let's see. Am I in full screen mode? Oh dear. There should be. Oh dear, I'm having trouble finding it, and I think it's because the resolution of this screen is so low. Oh, I know why. It's because we haven't actually created this this slice. If I'd actually successfully created this slice, there would be a button at the bottom of this middle column that let me reboot the nodes in my slice. So that's one way to fix it. Another way to fix it is that I mentioned earlier that there are that InstaGENI and ExoGENI have kind of different tools. So we do have serial console access for all of these things, but it's not exported through the GENI interface. So if you're doing some kind of heavy kernel work that requires you to frequently have serial console access so that you can debug kernel problems or whatever, you should send mail to the InstaGENI users list, which I guess we don't. It probably isn't listed anywhere on our handouts. Unfortunately, there's an InstaGENI-users at googlegroups.com list that you can join and I'm sorry, it's ProtoGENI-users. We don't have an InstaGENI users list. And we can set you up with serial console access. If it's just like you mess a machine up once and need to reboot it, I would just recommend doing it through FLAC. I hope that answered your question. Okay, so when you use FLAC to load a slice that has already been created, in fact, if you've successfully created this slice, in the middle column, like where the submit button is now, once the slice has been created, there'll be a button there to restart all of the nodes in your slice. So you can actually reboot them yourself. And then if you need serial console access, it's a little bit more complicated process, and you can email us and we can get you serial console access. So let's see, Gary, do you have any created slices? Oh, actually, let's see, maybe.
Should have deleted it. It might still be there by mistake, but. Yeah, that IGENI slice will be the only one, but I should have.
Let's see.
I should have deleted it.
I'm going to see if there's any slivers left in this slice, and if there are, I'll try to show you the button that I was talking about. I'm trying to think if I think I deleted the ones that I made this morning too. Yeah, it looks like not. I'll go ahead and try to set it up so that I can show you the button in a minute here, but it'll take a minute for my slice to get created. So. Any other questions I can answer while we've still got a few minutes? All right, well, we'll hang around here to answer questions one-on-one if people have them. And, oh, here, this button appeared. There are these three buttons down here that would let me stop and start and restart the nodes in my slice that you can now see above the submit button. Also, I mentioned earlier that these things expire after a while, and if you want to keep them longer, you have to renew them. This is also where you can renew them. There's this button here that lets you extend stuff for. Sorry. That lets you extend stuff for a few more days, and if you need a really long-running one that's going to run for weeks or months, we can actually give you a special credential that lets you extend your reservation for longer.
So what happens when the reservations expire?
Then all the virtual machines are torn down, or physical machines get rebooted and put into another operating system.
Does the thing pop up and say, "Would you like to continue," or does it just all collapse?
You will get email if your slice is going to last for more than a day. You'll get email 24 hours before warning you, and giving you the opportunity to renew it. But then when the expiration time comes, it all gets pulled out.
FLAC will tell you nothing; it will just disappear.
That's correct. You probably won't have FLAC open in a couple days when it expires. But yeah. Well, we'll be around to answer one-on-one questions, and for those of you who'll be back for the third part of the tutorial, again, If you didn't get that last slice created, ask one of us so that we can try to make sure that everybody starts the session with their slice created. And thank you.